Thank you, Brother Chu. Good evening, and good to see you here showing an interest in the practice of mindfulness meditation. I just want yesterday evening we had a talk about the art of attention, and the question who I noticed is here again this evening queried whether the term attention was used in the text. And often when you hear a question, it's only later when you reflect on it whether you're given a direct answer, or as I did last night, I say, well, that's an alternative rendering. But actually, when you look at the text, Satipatthana is the Pali Buddhist term for this practice. The Satipatthanas, the four Satipatthanas on body, feelings, the consciousness and mental objects. And Satipatthana, we can say these are the four establishments of mindfulness, but Sati of course is mindfulness, well aware, but Upatthana, which is Satipatthana being a compound term, Upatthana means close by or attentiveness. So being attentive, paying attention, is an alternative translation of sati, paying attention. And this is what mindfulness is. It's essentially meditation. Mindfulness meditation is essentially an exercise in training the attention. And so mindfulness is very simply paying attention to what you're doing. I just this evening want to bring it down into a more everyday, mundane sort of context rather than highfalutin, very rarefied, intensive practice. And that's why we'll discuss situational mindfulness. And in situational mindfulness, it can be brought down into ordinary, mundane, daily routine. Nothing special. And that's the great challenge with mindfulness. It's not that it's something esoteric, rarefied. It actually, the Buddha, in the text itself, says it can be used especially for everyday life. He said, mindfulness, quote, is useful everywhere. It's not something that you need special equipment or place. It can be used when you're in the supermarket, as you're getting around in your daily life, in your ordinary, everyday routine. So that's what we wanted to have a look at this evening. In whatever situation you're in, can be applied. But it's a practice. The practice is developing the skill, And it's so people separate it out into something you do in a retreat or in a rather than what you're doing in your everyday life. So, alternatively, if you're not mindful, if you don't have presence of mind, then it's mindlessness. You're living an automatic life, and there's consequences of that. That you live in a sort of distracted, wandering mind, not very present with what you're doing. It's what we say is you're on automatic pilot. You go through all the motions of doing things, but actually the mind, you're not with what you're doing as you're doing it, but more you're inclined to sort of, you just sort of get on do the routine, and your mind can be not attending, not being present, but wandering. So we have many distractions in our life, and one of the major things is that we're constantly preoccupied with our narrative, our internal narrative, our story. We're piecing together all these of our life, but we weave it into the autobiographical self. So if you listen to your thoughts during the day, without making any judgment, it's all about me, isn't it? What I've done, what I haven't done, what I should have done maybe, and on it goes. There's constant self-talk going on, which is, well, as I say, all it's doing is, making a person, a personality. When we see that's just a construction, there's no reality necessarily in that. You're just creating a story, and you believe it, or you believe what you want to believe. The negative stuff you don't want to know about, and so you become the hero of your story, and the self-talk goes on and on and on. So, but those consequences could be negative. It tends to be unwholesome, and it causes unhappiness. Because we're in this constant internal dialogue, and that leads to unhappiness by default. If we can break that circuit, and the way to actually connect with and break that circuit of this constant internal chatter, the wandering mind, is to start noticing what you're doing. Nothing much more. You notice that this is round and round it goes about oneself and one's doings. So the first is to notice, is to be that that is what's happening. And that will allow you, if you are noticing, condition that tendency for the wandering mind, because you start focusing. Once there's active attention, it deflects. I think the microphone is sort of going on, it's playing up. I blame the microphone, it's not me. Yes, that's better, as I think it is, yeah. How to work with the wandering mind and its distractions? Well, firstly, the distractions are essentially about emotions that one is experiencing. The emotions that come up. Some event comes up, and we get lost in some emotion. The mind plays with it, and it can even become quite obsessive. So emotions is one of the great distractions. And then, of course, this constant self-referencing is also a distraction. But also, as we live in a very high-powered culture where we're constantly feeding on the media, so much information's coming in, we're watching videos, television, news media. That is also where there's what we say where there's hyperactivity, there's a lot of preoccupation with the media, and so the term they use is information overload. So the mind is constantly agitated with all this stuff that we're putting in, and we're feeding on it, and what we find quite difficult, and the way you can torture somebody is for nothing to be happening. So we can't tolerate just quiet, just a pause in that. We constantly fill it up, and even when we supposedly relax again, we go and play a video game or music or something. It's very, very difficult for people now who are overstimulated just to be, And so if we go into nature, we find that it's a very natural way to wind down and quiet the mind without suppressing it. We're not at all suppressing it. We want to watch the mind. We want to watch the mind, but not being identifying with the content constantly. So that's a skill that can be acquired as in the practice of presence of mind, that we're watching the dialogue without bouncing off it, without reacting to it. And slowly, slowly, we can watch the thoughts come and go without just seeing them as just thoughts, natural thoughts. But we're not blocking or suppressing or inhibiting the thoughts. We simply become aware that there's this internal dialogue going on. And you'll find that you can create a space. There's more accepting and allowing the thoughts to come without following them through, just the thoughts, but not making these automatic associations with them. So you'll find too, another way that we get caught up in this internal dialogue through the emotions especially is the feelings. We're not noticing the feelings. So when we see, hear, smell, taste or touch, or even as we think, there are feelings. We can know that there's particular feelings happening when we like something or dislike. And you'll find with every sense impression, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting or touching, there's a feeling tone. Pleasant, we like it. Unpleasant, don't like. So liking, disliking is happening all the time. And we're not noticing it. And those feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, or even neither pleasant, unpleasant, that is, indifferent feelings, they are conditioning us. So if it's pleasant, of course, we want them more. If it's unpleasant, we're pushing away. So in fact, we're pushing away and pulling in. And they're in constant play. Even as you sit here listening, you're not doing, I think, much. I guess you're attending, you're being attentive, but other than that, there's some feeling going on in your body and in your mind. Whether it's your physical feeling and sensations in the body, is it pleasant? Is the temperature in the body pleasant or unpleasant? Is what you see pleasant or unpleasant? Pleasant? Is what you're hearing pleasant or unpleasant? What you smell, taste and touch, is it pleasant or unpleasant? So the practice of being mindful is monitoring those feelings in any of the sense doors. And that doesn't require that you're sitting down cross-legged in a static position. You can be walking in the supermarket. There's much, you're looking at all these goodies there, pushing around your trolley, and you're attracted to some fancy label or some item there constantly. You like it, or you don't like this one. So it's simply a matter of monitoring your feelings throughout the day. Actually, people say they're bored, but there's so much going on as far as feeling, just simply feelings going, and those feelings then induce some mind state. So it's mostly pleasant feeling, of course. It's a pleasant or positive mind state. Also, one can know one is getting around in the daily routine, the mind state. In fact, a mind state is also has an impact. Either it's a pleasant mind state which you're pulling at, which you're liking and want to hang on to, or you're resisting. If it's unpleasant mind state, there's some anger or reactions happening, then you're pushing it away. Right? But we don't notice. It always comes down very simply to the fact, mindfulness, you can notice what's happening. As long as you're not preoccupied with your internal narrative, which we are. So this wandering mind is a problem, because that's really what's predominant. naturally. That's the default setting of the mind. It's wandering, right? Now, if you then have more selective attention, if you intentionally, purposely focus on something, then that cuts the wandering. It deselects, it inhibits the natural wandering of the mind. This natural wandering of the mind is the default mode. It's going to happen anyway, but if you purposely, intentionally select what to focus on, it's focused attention, it inhibits or deselects that tendency to wander, to meander around in your mind. And while you're wandering, you're not mindful, because it's just random material that's coming and going, or reactions that are happening, So if you can train the mind, and the Buddha very emphasized that it's training. That the mind is, while it's in its essence, it's luminous, it's pure, but it's actually, for most of us, there are defilements, if you like, negative material there that we're being subjected to. So the practice then of mindfulness, paying attention, will release these impurities, if you like, in the mind. It will release them as long as you're accepting of what is happening in the mind, even though it might be quite negative. As long as you're allowing, accepting, this material will be released by having this focused attention. It will surface, and this is something where, for a person who is practicing more intensively mindfulness, that they will find actually more and more old material, old memories, maybe traumas come through, and that's affecting them. Rather than expecting to have a nice meditation, actually more material, the deeper levels of the mind, the below conscious levels of material will surface. And so often people will pull out of practice because of that, when the expectation is that it will all be very nice and beautiful. We're going to have a nice meditation and feel good. But actually, when you're doing mindfulness practice, it can be just as much not so good. But it's how you relate to that material. If there's acceptance and allowing and less reaction, that material can discharge. Because they're essentially old ghosts in the mind, or old memories, old material. It releases the ghosts, the phantoms of the mind. That is the benefit of mindfulness meditation. If you do only concentration practice, when this becomes one-pointed, you might know of that, samatha. If you only do that, it actually puts, as it were, a lid on the practice, and this material, what we call in the Pali term, and you say kilesas, that is dormant negative material in the mind, is blocked. And so the mind, because it's concentrated, one-pointed, feels good. It's wholesome. But the hidden material, the dormant material, remains there. So by just any sort of concentration, if you get focused and you block out everything else, the mind is wholesome, but it's not clear. The impurities still remain. This is why, if you go back to the Buddha's own experience before he got enlightened, he went to 2 teachers to learn the deeper levels of concentration practice we call samatha. And samatha means just calming. That's the benefit of it, and it stabilizes the mind. But it doesn't clear the mind, it doesn't bring clarity. So of itself, it is partially, it can be used. In fact, it's good to have that stability and then build up to Vipassana. Or you can just go for practice pure Vipassana of itself. That is mindfulness of itself. It's probably a bit more, it creates waves. In fact, the Buddha said that was a story just before he actually chose a place under the bo tree. He was washing his bowl in the nearby Naranja river at Gaya, or became Budgaya. And the bowl, apparently according to the story, as he was washing it, it slipped out of his hand and the bowl went upstream, right? So people read that as a miracle, you know, indicating perhaps the Buddha was having, that the Buddha would, a sign that the Buddha would be enlightened. That the bowl, apparently, according to the story, went against the stream. But I would think that's more of a metaphor. You can't take it literally that happened, but that it's a metaphor for the practice, because essentially we're going against the current. We're going against the natural mind. The natural mind, I say, wanders. It just meanders around. Whereas the trained mind is actually going against the stream, going against the nature, the mind's inclination, and it creates waves. So it creates white water, if you like. And so that's why mindfulness, even in Buddhist countries, in Sri Lanka, Thailand, these Theravada countries I know, very few people, until it was revived in Burma for the Mahasi side or practice, they all went to the samatha practice. In the forest tradition, which I practiced in Sri Lanka, they all were doing samatha. They weren't doing mindfulness because it's not easy, because you're going against the current, you see? You're going against the natural inclination of the mind. See? You're going to create waves. So it's very nice if you can concentration up, fix concentration, one-pointedness, you feel good. You get very positive effects. So that's why meditation in a general sense is quite popular in the West, because you can induce a calm, positive state, temporarily only, whereas mindfulness, the Buddha said in the text, the set of instructions the Buddha gave in the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha said, this is for the purification of beings, you see. So the purification comes through the actual practice of mindfulness, when you have to face and accept that it's going to dredge up, as it were, negative material. Now, so it's very critical how you relate to that material. There might be anger there might be pain, and all this negative things. But if you accept it, it will decondition the mind. It will clear that off. It's an important process, this purification of mind. It's not something which will happen miraculously, instantaneously. It takes application and perseverance and practice. It's a long-term thing. I mean, there's exceptional people whose minds are very clear, but you know, for the majority, it's not so. You know, you've got to spend some time, quite amount of time, really, realistically, in the practice of mindfulness to purify the mind itself. And the Buddha then said, the mind is naturally luminous, but our minds have been contaminated by these impurities. And any definition, standard definition of enlightenment, the mind is of light, of clarity, purity, is there is no greed, hatred, or ignorance. That's a standard definition for, you know, you want to know what nirvana is, well, all you can say to people, it's free of greed, just an ignorance. You don't need to say anything more, because it's quite difficult to explain to a person what nirvana is. It may be, you know, absolute peace and so on, but it's certainly clean of identification. See? The focus actually in mindfulness is to seeing the processes of the mind and body. So we don't personalize. So we're free of this this self we've constructed. We've personalized it. In an absolute sense, it's just a construction. I mean, in a mundane level, sure, we have a personality, we've got a personal history, but in an absolute sense, it's just our own construction or our conditioning. So we see that when we really investigate, and that's a very important quality, experientially investigating this body and mind. It's not analysing, it's not intellectual analysis of what this body and mind is. It's not philosophical, it's direct knowing through one's own experience of exploring through mindfulness, which always has an investigative edge of the characteristics, specific characteristics of this body. And in our tradition, which is the Mahasi Sayadaw tradition, we focus on the body through its elements. We tune in and find the elements in the body. So instead of having an image of the body, you know, mirror image, or an idea about what this body is, we see it's just made up of elements, natural elements. It's not, you know. And we can go deeper than that, a lot of other characteristics of the body, but essentially it's just elements. And those elements just themselves as elements, not as me or mine, they're just natural elements. Whether they're the primary elements, earth, air, fire and water, and the characteristics of fire being temperature, earth is hardness and softness, and the wind element is movement, vibration. These characteristics we can expose, uncover in our physicality in this thing we call the body. And the same with the mind. We can see the mind's functioning, see its particular characteristics. That is important, that we're not just practicing some mechanical technique, but we're exposing, revealing the specific characteristics which will manifest, be general or universal characteristic of this mind-body, which is always number one, change. Everything is changing. Even since you sat here when we started at 8 o'clock, the body has changed, the mind, everything's constantly in flux and changing. There's nothing really that's going to remain static. Nothing in the universe ever will, ever has. All the material things, even the whole creation is changing constantly. We're very preoccupied with climate change, and that's so. We need to, because it's getting very concerning how it's going when people are not really addressing the fact we're affecting the very climate, on the planet that we're living in. But anyway, it's always going to change, and always has changed. We've gone through all the different ice ages and all the different upheavals. Lots have happened before us, you know, and lots are going to happen after us. We've gone, even though we probably go to some other planets. However, that's an aside. So everything's in change, everything's in flux, and you can see that in your own body and mind. You don't have to believe it or be told by somebody else. You can find that out. You can have the direct experience of that. That will bring a transformation, not some intellectual, notion about it. You can know directly. You can know that everything is constantly In your own body and the mind, it's constantly. Everything, therefore, is distressful, is distress because of change. We can't stop it. Right? It's a natural unfolding of the phenomena. There's a beginning of everything, there's a manifesting of it, and there's passing away. You know, there's birth, there's life and death. That's nature. You know, we go after the use, you know, but we can't keep our appearance forevermore. The whole thing's going to break down if we live long enough. You know, it doesn't matter if we get spare parts, new hips, new hearts, and everything else. Eventually, it's all going to break down that and go through the cycle. Mm-hmm. So, and we see if we actually have some insights, which is the outcome of mindfulness, we will see that these are just processes. And they are just something that people don't like the notion of. They're impersonal. They're just impersonal processes happening. And that's what we can say when people talk about, you know, the Pali terms anatta. What do you mean by anatta? Well, you can have a great philosophical discussion of what we mean anatta, or you can go to the text and read all about it. But you can have the direct experience of yourself, whether you can explain it or not, but you've experienced just processes in the body. So that tendency to identify, to cling to this body-mind, to the body itself, the Buddha said, these groups of the body, the perception, what you recognize, the feelings we identify, cling to, and as I've been saying, especially the whole mental constructs we create, the story about, we identify with that. So, and that's us, that's it, isn't it, really? But there's something much more subtle that the Buddha said of these khandhas or groups. It's the knowing itself that we don't notice, because it's just there. There's consciousness, and here we are again, waking consciousness, and off we go again. You know, and we're identifying unknowingly with a consciousness. Now that's a very subtle thing. You see, you're hearing now. There's also the knowing and the seeing, and there's a knowing of touching, the knowing, all the senses. There's also the consciousness of. You see? But we don't notice, you see? And if we don't examine, if we don't investigate, so what sort of a life are we living? You know? We're just living on a superficial surface, superficial life. By default we suffer. Because we're resisting, you know, we get old. We can't maintain our financial position or our work, we lose employment. You know, everything is changing and coming and going. There's no ultimate control. I mean, you can discriminate. If you've got more clarity, you're more likely to do that. You're not so much just buffered about by circumstances. So we come back, you know, in I don't want to get too airy-fairy about, you know, esoteric things. We just come back down to earth, and we can look at what we're doing in our everyday, ordinary, routine, mundane existence. Can you do anything? You just notice, watch the thoughts coming and go, the feelings during the day when you hear, smell, and touch. Are you noticing, monitoring the feelings during the day? The mind states. I mean, you haven't meditated, have you? I mean, you haven't sat cross-legged all day. You haven't gone to the temple or retreat. You've been just noticing. So I just want to read to you from the text, because I'm careful that we should refer to the text, you know, not just what I'm rambling on about, but in the Satipatthana Sutta, the 4 establishments of mindfulness, in the first section, which is on the body, well, the 4 are body, feelings, the consciousness, Chittanupassana, and Dhammanupassana, which is variously translated as mental objects. Could be thoughts, ideas, concepts, ideas. So in this, what do we call Sampajana? That's another compound word with sati. Sati, mindfulness. Sampajana means either it's been translated full attention, okay, or clear comprehension. And that's what very important clear comprehension is as far as mindfulness goes. Because you can listen to a talk or read something or whatever, or watch a video, and if I ask you, if somebody questioned you, you might say, I don't know, it just sort of went through my mind. Like, I don't know anything about, it was sort of vague. You might know the title. What did you hear? Was any comprehension? I don't know, at school there's always comprehension tests, So you're compelled to pay attention and try to pick up the theme of the story or the characters or the outcome, But much of the input or what we observe, it just goes in one ear as we say out the other. There's little comprehension. And this is this mind that's this sort of floating around, wandering around. It's not actually activated. It's not present. Without presence of mind, you're living a very automated. You need to do it for your own benefit. And because we're always in relationship, we can't get real relationship whether we like. Even if you were a monk or nun sitting out in the forest meditating, you're still going to relate to something. You're going to relate to the people who support. We're always in relationship. It's all interdependent, interrelated. So coming back to just the everyday mundane aspect of practice, and in the text the Buddha's saying to his monks and nuns, when you get about, I'll read it, when you are going forward or while going back, he or she does with clear knowing. While looking straight ahead or while looking elsewhere, he or she does with clear knowing. While bending or stretching his or her limbs, he does with clear knowing. While carrying the alms bell, while wearing the robe, he or she does with clear knowing. While eating, drinking, chewing, and savouring, he or she does with clear knowing or full attention. While urinating or defecating, he or she does with clear knowing. While walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, waking, speaking, or when remaining silent, he or she does with clear knowing or full attentiveness. Attentiveness, you see? That's it. That's it. So the Buddha is not saying anything. He's emphasizing the continuity of this attentiveness, see? Or mindfulness in all daily activities. He's not saying it's special occasion or it's just when you go to the bathroom, when you get about wandering, going from A to B. That is the emphasis in the Satipatthana Sutta. And there's many people, especially in Sri Lanka, who can chant this in Pali backwards. But you ask them whether they're doing it, no. It's become a pirate. It's something to the spirits, It's nothing to do with that. It's only a set of very, very practical instructions on how to do it. It's not a holy text. It's not a magic formula. It's just how to do it, that's all. You know? Sure, it's been given by the Lord Buddha, but he's giving very, very down-to-earth instructions how to be mindfulness in your everyday life, in whatever you're doing. That's really for me, that puts the cap on it. It doesn't have to be done in a special place or need any special equipment or situation. It is whatever situation you happen to be in. And you're monitoring the body movements. Actually, the body is the best, because the body, it brings you down to earth. It connects you with the present moment reality. And there's quite a lot of little, if like, ways to bring yourself down into the body, because we tend most of the time to be up in our heads, don't we? Thinking and pondering and worrying and mulling over things in our head. Self-talk is going on and on all the time. But when we get down, I'm always, even as I'm speaking now, believe it or not, I'm actually feeling, I'm touching. I'm sitting on the chair and I can feel touch sensation. So in a sense, you always can anchor yourself, whatever the situation is, to the physical touch sensation. Whether you're standing up, sitting down, or lying down, you're touching. You can feel, as I feel now, because I don't have to think. If I think about I should be mindful, it'll just be another thought that comes and goes. But because I've conditioned myself over many years, every time I sit, I connect with the sitting touch sensations of the body, the buttocks of the cushion or wherever. I'm always touching. So even though my mind can go all over, I'm still anchored to the present moment reality. And that's a simple, if I had to think about it, I won't do it. But I've now inbuilt, habituated if you like. Habits are not good. This is a good habit. It's become inbuilt. So I'm sitting here talking, I'm hoping I'm making sense, but anyway, I know I'm here. I'm not wondering, what's going on outside or what's some event that happened during the day. Present. And that's mindfulness. Presence. It's as simple as that. I mean, people, you can't necessarily expect 100% all the time. And people do have that, okay, we lose it occasionally. You've got to be, don't strain yourself, don't stress yourself about it. But it's got to be, they say, they've done studies, it takes 3 months, full months, to ingrain a practice. If any time during that 3 months, you so I'll do it tomorrow or when I'm feeling better, you've got to do it. So especially with mindfulness, you've got to be able to do it when you're not feeling, so well. You might be you're not feeling too well, you might have a flu or something, or you've had a heavy day or something. That's the time when you're looking at those feelings. They're unpleasant feelings. Okay, they're unpleasant. And you'll find that if you acknowledge unpleasant feelings or a mind state, there's also the resistance there, because you've tightened up. Often in the body will contract. So if you're monitoring the body condition, there's you've got tight or tense, you just relax it and the mind will relax too. See? So there's these simple little strategies of maintaining presence of mind, either through the body itself, because the body we're interrelated, interconnected. So if there's mental stress at all, it's also been manifest in the body. So if you check out the body, if you just relax the body, you may not be able to know what's really going on in the mind, but you can know what's happening, how it's manifesting in the body with the tension in the body. So if you just relax the body and settle into the physicality, okay. And you'll find in practice a lot of the emotions will come out through the body, sadness or depression, it can be. So there's great benefits. That's why the Buddhists have forgotten all about it. They're just chanting and doing services. They've forgotten all about it. But all the psychotherapies in the West, they're not using, group therapy or anything. They're all using mindfulness. They used to be using cognitive behavior therapy, They call it CBT. They all... Now they don't do that anymore. They're all doing mindfulness. They're teaching, somebody comes with depression or some trauma, mindfulness. They're using it as a healing tool, as a therapeutic benefit for the person who's in mental distress. Well, it's depression or bipolar disorders, all the mindfulness they're using, totally. But what are the Buddhists doing? You see, there's healing in there, certainly, as they found actually when they're doing in neuroscience, with the functional MRI scanners, they can, as the brain, once I'm practicing mindfulness, actually the most obvious effect are biological. It relieves stress, so it's therapeutic. Of course, it's much deeper than that. The Buddha didn't say it's just for healing. Certainly it's natural healing, it's more of a byproduct. The Buddha said that this practice, these practices of satipatthanas, these 4 established in mindfulness, leads to transformation of consciousness, to lead to, if you like, the enlightenment. In the text, there's factors of enlightenment, and they always start with mindfulness, with investigation of the phenomena, that pair, investigation, experiential. I don't know. I think that's all I need to say. Is there somebody who'd like to make a comment or? Okay. Anyway, it's not about saying all about it. It's really actually doing something, actually trying to do it.
Venerable, just now you mentioned about the purification process, when the anusaya kilesas come up. If we do kind of like pure vipassana, we don't start with samatha, then we don't quite have quite a good control of the mind. So when these kilesas come up, it is a difficult process to deal with. So what is your advice?
It is difficult, and and traditionally it has been done in doing samatha to stabilize the mind somewhat. There is an advantage in that. So I know in the Mahasi system we tend to just do pure vipassana till a person's got a good handle on the technique, and then bring in, say, metta bhavana, loving kindness, which is a sweetener of the mind. And that will, especially the emotions, the negative emotions that rise, that is a way to settle the mind, to stabilize the mind. And I'm finding one of my teachers now, especially when he goes west, Westerns are more upfront with the emotions. I'm sure everybody has the emotions. We're more upfront, and we'll report that we've been anger or the sadness or these sort of more negative emotions. And so the teachers, and even in the Mahasi tradition, which is really a pure Vipassana tradition, are presenting more metta, loving kindness. It's essentially a sweetener. It's sort of, from a Western psychological point of view, it's more auto-suggestion, more positive things. So, but the problem with that is, if you do samatha, you feel good, so you're less inclined to work with negative material. In fact, essentially you're pushing it down, you're blocking it. So yeah, most definitely in just doing pure Vipassana, you have to build up the ability to accept whatever arises. And essentially what you're doing, instead of suppressing it, you're developing, by working with the emotions and unpleasant feelings, physical or mental, you're building up more acceptance and equanimity, right? Which doesn't necessarily come with if you're just feeling good and stopping at that. You're tending to build up to some degree more and more equanimity, more balance of mind. So the difficult thing arises, it's there, you know. And if there's no resistance, no trying to block or suppress, it will pass. What you find in pure Vipassana, very naturally things are changing all the time. One mind state, these feelings come and go, there's mental stuff coming up, come and go, come and go. So you sort of get more relaxed about stuff that's coming up. And that allows a ventilation process more. And that's critical in this purification process. The material is being discharged, if you like, in a sense. That it's being deconditioned. If you block it, okay, the one-pointedness, the concentrated mind just on one point, will suppress it and the mind is wholesome, but it will not process the kilesas, the anussaya kilesas, the dormant material out of the mind. You see, that's the risk. So as I say, you're subject in pure Vipassana to this white water, you know, the resistance of the mind, you're going against the current of the incline of the mind. So, but by accepting, things come and go, you know, and it might, for many people, a lot of anger comes through in the sittings, you know. And I know when I was practicing long term, anger was keeping coming up, on and on and on, you know, and it wasn't relating to anybody in particular. No particular incident that caused the anger, but anger was coming in the mind, or sadness is coming in the mind. And so, especially sadness, very commonly people will experience, you know, pressure in the chest, sadness in the chest. But if you just watch those sensations, they pass. Yeah? The mind is being cleared, purified. It does take courage, most definitely, you know, to face that. But this is why you need a person with you who's had that experience, you see, because you could. Well, there's even a stage in the insight knowledges where we call it rolling up the mat, colloquially, because it gets too intense. We want to go away. Well, it's too much, you know, stuff is coming up all the time. And the equanimity is not really, has built up so that we just accept it. We're reacting to some extent. So people run away, literally. Roll up the mat and get out of it, you know. That's one way to handle it, you know. Flight, you know, we say in psychological terms, flight or fight. We fight or we take off, we fly. But if you're prepared to accept those feelings, then that passes too. There's nothing that won't pass if you're prepared to allow it, to accept it, and not react to it. And that's what's happens in pure Vipassana more, is it becomes more non-reactive. Okay, you're starting to see demons or ghosts or something. Okay, they're just ghosts. They're phantoms in the mind. And if you don't play back into them, they're not realities. Right? They're just images in the mind, you know, they come and go. And we're very careful too, any images, if you see beautiful Buddhas, the same thing. You know, you don't get attached on seeing beautiful images of Buddhas or Nibbana or something, you know, or heavens. They're just pictures in the mind, that's all. The mind is projecting this material. Or if you see devils and horror things, it's the same thing. And that's why when stage in the practice, there's this balance of mind. You know? You can't. Okay, there's difficult material might come up. It's okay. There's the mind comes to an even keel. It settles, accepts negative material, difficult imagery, or even audio material will come through. It's very much part of the process, the purification process. People hear hallucinations. Now, I mean, people with mental, will have hear sounds, and they will believe it. But you can, in very deep practice, some really homicidal, what's dredging down on the depths of the mind, what's there. So whatever comes up, that's okay. And the equanimity builds up, and that is of the 7 factors, that is the maturity of the practice. This equanimity, this balance of mind. And if you've got more equanimity in just ordinary life, you're calm, you're more collected, more present with what's happening. There's more clarity in the mind. So much benefit. But what are Buddhists doing? It's there. The teachings are still there. And there are teachers and people you can practice with. So that's a good point. How to work with the impurities that arise in the mind. How to relate to them. And that's all the matter, that you're just simply an impartial witness. It's a witnessing. Pure witnessing, that's all. Simple terms.
Good evening, Reverend. But a lot of Westerners, they use psychoanalysis. So if whatever arises, they ask you to go to the source. So actually you are trying to recreate a lot of trauma. How to say you have a fear, or you try to look back, or when you were young, was there any incident that caused? So all these things, is it a form, is it good? But I think in our practice, we don't look at the cause. But in psychoanalysis, they ask you to go to the source. And it can be imagination. And then it's getting worse. Instead of getting better, it's getting worse. So how do you use self-referencing in this sense? Are we supposed to look objectively, or are we supposed to look back and then sublimate the past?
Yeah, well, the whole psychoanalysis profession has looked into dredging back into the past, analysing all the traumas and psychoanalysis from Freudian to Jungian sort of psychology, and I think that is now, it can be useful for some people certainly, to hope to somewhat clarify the mind. It's also, to some extent, reinforcing that. While it's exposing old traumas apparently, it's not necessarily clearing them out of the mind. Go for years in the classical psychoanalyst relationship, going through all the trauma that happened in their childhood. Sure, that is so, but from a Buddhist point of view, that's totally unnecessary. We're not analysing this material and resolving that past history. It's because it's simply, again, just what happened. Those incidents happened in a childhood. There might be some really deep traumas and abuse of some sort that still the mind is, or for instance, a person might have got to, a military person might have had these traumas from horrific wars, and certainly there's, rather than suppressing it, you can express it and some release in that. But in an ultimate sense, it's not playing back into it. That's the Buddhist approach with Satipatthana. We don't play back into that material. But because we've become more, the mind is open, that material will naturally surface. It's like, dreams. People have commonly recurring dreams come up, and they might be quite disturbing. But if you're able, images might come up in the mind in the dreams, a horrific dream image, and the mind will break out, will wake up with a disturbing image. But once you're able to look at that image, however difficult it might be, it's just a phantom. And all that, even the traumas that you've experienced perhaps in your growing up, in your childhood, they're imprinted there for sure. But they can be released without you reacting to them. But it's a skill. And I believe it takes courage. So psychoanalysts, there's people who are still doing it, but I'm saying in modern psychotherapy, the emphasis was on cognitive behavior therapy, which was the idea that you could reframe the content of the cognition, you could retrain it, but cognitive training is inbuilt into the practice of Satipatthana. It is cognitive training too, but it's more than that. It's just this purification of mind that occurs. This cleansing of the mind, this discharge that is deconditioning the mind. Mm-hmm. One of the things that comes up in practice is the cause of the suffering. You would know as Buddhists, the Buddha in the Four Noble Truths said, the cause of distress, dukkha, and there's not really a good translation for that. You could say unsatisfactoriness, but maybe distress or suffering has connotations we don't use in the West. It's just all negative. But distress is there for certain. The cause is the hankering in the mind, isn't it? The urges in the mind, right? It's very powerful. The biological urges certainly too, food and sex is a biological thing, to maintain our organism. The biological urges in the mind, but there's also the urges we create ourselves. But you'll find in Satipatthana Vipassana that you can look at the urges in the mind in a very simple way. It deconditions the mind. There's less we call it the addictive mind, the addictions we have, whatever it might be, maybe some food or whatever, or alcohol or smoking, all these sort of little addictions, or cravings just for attention and these sort of things. These urges in the mind are very strong, very deeply ingrained biological urges, and when you practice, they come up. And they could be simple things like, okay, when you're sitting there, you get an itch. There's a very trivial example, right? So there's an itch, there's an irritation on the skin. So very naturally, without thinking, there's an irritation and we scratch, right? But if, as we're sitting in a meditation posture and we can't move, it's possible to, acknowledge the itch, but the actual primary thing is the urge to relieve it. So if we don't react to the itchiness of the skin, irritation, but notice the urge, every time we notice an urge without playing it out, without reacting, it's deconditioning those urges in the mind, that impulse in the mind. It's deconditioning it if we're present, if we notice the urges. You see? So we're deconditioning slowly. We're cleaning the the desire which is cause of suffering, as you know, the urges of the mind. In fact, we have a saying, we're surfing, when you're practicing, we're surfing all these urges that come in the mind. You know, especially if you're doing a more into more austerities or, very plain food, you urge for sugar for nice taste. But you just notice it, and it passes. So you're deconditioning the addictions, the urges, the impulses in the mind. So you're clearing the mind of that. Otherwise, what are you doing? The more and more you play out the urges, you're more conditioning, and then you're caught in it. Whereas if you practice mindfulness and you're noticing these urges, just noticing, you don't have to do anything about them, but just the actual, you don't have to interfere. That's the thing about Vipassana. You don't, as you say in psychoanalysis, you're actually interfering with it all, playing with the content, trying to resolve it, surely. But in Vipassana, you just observe those urges. You see those feelings, of pain, and it's deconditioning. So you're free. You're actually able to access the cause of the suffering. That is the main power, the deep power of the Buddha's practice of mindfulness. So the mind is freed of the urges. It becomes luminous. As it is, the Buddha said, the mind is actually luminous. It's just these urges, these impurities, that's causing the trouble. And we've got the teachings, so we just have to implement them, that's all. And if we did it in our everyday sort of routine sort of life, you'd be surprised what you can, I've come across people, I've had workshops and we've emphasized the mindfulness in daily life, and they haven't done very much else. And I'm surprised the depth of the practice some people have been able to achieve just by applying this very simple presence in whatever they're doing, whether it's a domestic chore or getting around the place, going shopping, wandering in the park, taking the dog around, whatever, anything at all, everything. In any situation, if you can maintain mindfulness, there's massive benefits. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I think that's enough.
On your talk on mindfulness this evening, Bhante raised several times the concept clear comprehension. Can Bhante just elaborate on this notion of clear comprehension, and how does it relate to the concept mindfulness, and what is the actual difference between clear comprehension and mindfulness?
It's an aspect of mindfulness. Clear comprehension is an aspect of mindfulness. Mm-hmm. And sati sampajana is a compound term, which is sati, mindfulness, with clear comprehension. So you can be mindful, or you can have some present, but you're not, what the comprehension is about, you're not picking up the specific characteristic of the phenomena. You're not reading it. You're not seeing its characteristics, particular characteristics. So unless you do, you have no comprehension. You might be present, you might be observing, but there's no investigation, there's no seeing. So comprehension would assume that you have read the signs, the particular characteristics will reveal the universal or general characteristics. So in that sense, it's comprehension. Otherwise, sure, you could say I was present, but you're just sort of not, in a mundane sense, comprehension, of course, means that I've talked all this evening, you've retained something. So, if that's good enough. Yeah, I guess it can to some extent, but it's not direct knowing. It's more reflection, and it has some value, certainly, but more experientially, the comprehension is direct knowing, not so much as reflecting back, and because that's more the thinking process. It's more in pure vipassana. It's more direct experiential knowing that's transforming rather than reflection, which is conceptual. I mean, there's some value in it. You can't dismiss it, but more it manifests say we're looking at physicality, looking at the body elements, they will manifest. So normally say, and those manifest, say the wind, the element of the body of wind, say, and those characters will manifest, and they will manifest their characteristics. So they say the wind element in the body, which we wouldn't normally be aware of or analyze, they will be exposed the movement and the vibratory level, and they will expose, say, in movement, instead of there being just one movement, we see many, many movements and the intention before each movement. So that wouldn't normally be able to read that. That we will see what seems to be one continuous movement is actually like a video. It's actually made up of many frames. Like a video would go, say, 32 frames per second. But we see that continuity is an illusion. There's actually not a fixed permanent thing there. It's many, many, many frames. So it's possible to go deep down in mindfulness to see the breakup of the phenomena. And it will not what we assume about it, but when we go deep down, we'll see that there's an illusion of continuity as far as just moving the hand. There's many, many. So that breaks a whole different level of how we relate to the physicality, and we see that level of. Whereas we can reflect back and think, oh, that's what's going on, but that's concepts and ideas, which has its place, but actually direct experiential knowing brings transformation of itself. Mm-hmm. Whereas pure vipassana is not reflective. That's more of a samatha idea. It has its place, but to bring to make things conscious that are not normally unconscious. So we're working more deeper in the mind and making things conscious that are not conscious. In fact, we can know what seems that the consciousness itself seems to be constant, isn't it? You wake up, consciousness is always present. But actually, at a very deep level of the practice, we see that the consciousness also, like everything in the universe, is rising and passing away. But to see that at a deep level, it's not a gross, mundane thing. Right? That's why the practice is a training in this way of seeing the body and mind. That the consciousness itself, like the body, like the feelings, the mental content is coming and going, coming and going. And that's direct experiential knowing, not second-hand knowledge. It's not book, not somebody what tells you. You know or you don't know. That's it. You've experienced or you haven't experienced it. That's why you can't do anything, all these ideas, unless you're actually doing it, unless you're a practitioner. You can't know. It's not available to you. It doesn't matter how much theory, how much textbook you study. It's not available. Right? You find people who've done a lot of deep study, you know, who've got degrees, they've got a PhD, or, you know, they've got second-hand knowledge. It's okay. Doesn't mean the teaching will continue on because of that sort of thing. Has its place, but it's not. It won't bring transformation of consciousness. In fact, you don't need a lot of knowledge. I mean, I've been going on all this evening, the last 2 talks. You don't need it. If you're prepared, and this is what I when I went to Burma first. I had actually practiced for over 40 years, but about the first 10 years I didn't know nothing. But I was reading a lot about it, I was hearing a lot about it, studying a lot about it. But I didn't actually know. When I got to Burma, they just gave me a very simple exercise, you know, noting in the body. So it's simplistic, you know. I know all that. I've heard all that. I actually done it. And I was in a situation quite desperate. Oh, well, I'll just do it, you know. So I spent 1 year, 12 hours a day, just doing it. You see? It wasn't all the information, the knowledge about it. It was actually the doing it. Doing quite simple exercises, and of themselves, they will expose it. Doesn't matter how much you know about it. In fact, that becomes a hindrance. It becomes a, you know, you're ready, you know, you're knowledgeable. You know, but you don't. So a person prepared, which I was in my desperation, just do it. It's okay, that's how it goes. But you have to be with somebody who's had the travel experience, and that's the problem. Even the Buddha said, you know, everything we know as far as reportage that the Buddha said comes through his attendant, the Ananda, Venerable Ananda. All the suttas start out with Ewan me sutang. I heard it this way. See, it's a reportage. Now, Ananda spent, 45 years as attending Buddhism. And if the Buddha was indisposed, he was not able to give some talk or instruction, Ananda would step up and give, you know, a talk. But so towards the end of their relationship, the Buddha's teaching life of 45 years, Ananda came up with, well, I've been with you for so long, I've learnt all what you've said, now I can do it myself. No problem, you know, I've got all the information. The Buddha said, not so, Ananda, unless you have a Kalyana Mitta, that is, a mentor, a guide, you can't know. And yet this person was at the first stage. He already made the breakthrough. He hadn't been fully enlightened, if you like. But the Buddha checked him and said, no, you have to have a guide. You know, you're going in a sense what he's saying, you're going unknown territory. You've got to have somebody to work with. You know? Somebody that's had travel experience. You can't do it by yourself. It doesn't much how much. I mean, if anybody knew what the Buddha said, it would have been Ananda. And yet Buddha's telling him after so many years, when he hadn't made the final breakthrough, he needed a guide, a mentor. And that's the most difficult thing actually in the practice. Most certainly you can do mindfulness and get a lot of benefit, but the very deeper practice, you need somebody to work with. You know, so, and surprisingly, that there are people around, and I found that when I went to Burma and worked with the masters there, that was the way. I wouldn't have had a clue otherwise. It didn't matter how much knowledge I had about it, it was actually a simple doing with a person who has that depth of practice, who knows where you're at and can guide you and mentor you. So that's important. Anyway, should leave it at that, I think.
Just about probably around 10 minutes, yeah, to get some idea. Thank you.
This is only the artist's impression of what we're going to build. And I just got so this is the accommodation units, single rooms for 45 meditators. And we have 95 acres of land near the town of Lismore, northern New South Wales, on the east coast of Australia. That is the part of the meditation hall. And we are going to build a stupa, a miniature Shwedagon, and this is the Burmese-style pavilion, which we've changed actually. We've changed that actually. But anyway, that's now enclosed, and that will be one of the first buildings. So we're looking from the stupa to the meditation hall. There's the meditation hall. It has a veranda for walking meditation, be 45 meditators, but it can hold about 150 people. This is showing the dining room and kitchen, an office. And this would be the teachers, 2-bedroom teachers accommodation. Again the stupa, the Shwedagon from Burma, replica. There's a picture of it. A lot of birds. Actually, we have a lot of birds. And this is the hall, looking into the hall. So here's a bird's eye view of the retreat complex. This is the top of the hill, and we have 2 valleys with permanent water, creek. And we have a base of a 2-bedroom house, and I have a kuti, and so we've established, this was on a rundown farmland in subtropical area, and we've been rejuvenating the land. We've planted it since we've been there for now 9 years. We've got the permission, which is the most difficult thing in Australia, to build a complex, and we will be. It's 8 stages. It's going to cost something like 3 million. It's quite a challenge, but we have enough now just to start the first stage, which is a 2-bedroom accommodation for with wheelchair access, a what we call now a pavilion, enclosed pavilion, which will be the temporary meditation hall. So that's what we're doing. And what the idea is to have a purpose-built retreat complex, and there's none in Australia, except for Ajahn Brahms. We must allow that on the west coast. He's built a $6 million retreat, very nice. But he calls it Samadhi Grove, so he's much more into samatha, jhana, which is good, fine. We're essentially just, we will be, this month, will become a sub-branch of the Mahasi side or Satipatthana Vipassana practice in Myanmar. Not that we'll then bring in teachers from Burma, masters from Burma, also to teach there. I've been running retreats for the last 3-4 years. I have other Western teachers, Canadian monk, and an old friend of mine, Patrick Kearney, who's also a Vipassana teacher. So we run short retreats at the moment, 10-day retreats and workshops, weekend workshops. So we've got a teaching program going, but essentially they need purpose-built proper facilities for people. Then Wei came with 2 years ago now, and came and supporting us, and came with a group of monks and nuns and lay people, and we're starting to build. We will be starting to build this month, and then we will be fundraising to try and get the place up and running as soon as we can. But it's always a long-term project. It might take 5 more years, I think, possibly minimum of the whole retreat. But we have managed, which is the big hurdle in Australia, to work through all the bureaucratic regulations. We've managed that with the help of friends. So we material here that you might want to distribute. It will benefit people, because what's important, we have deeper practice. In the West, people just do 10 days short term. We need at least some people who are able to do long-term deep practice. The practice won't survive. The practice side of it, the text will survive. Unless we have more people who will mature into teachers or practitioners who can do the deep level of the practice. That's the most important thing. That's the reason why we've set this. It's not a temple. It's not a devotional center. It'll be a Satipatthana intensive retreat practice. That's how it's going to be. But we're not a Buddhist culture. We don't have a community. Although in Sydney, we're up on the north coast, there are the Vietnamese Buddhists. They are supporting us non-fundraising for us. And that money we've used, $200,000, to start a modest start for our build. And hopefully, if we can get the build done by February, first part of it, then possibly. It's no good already brochures and videos. People need to see something literally concrete, something that is actually happening.